hard work beats talent.
I don't believe in talent. I'm here because I worked hard my whole life.
Hard work beats talent every single time.
Okay, but what if it doesn't? What if hard work does not beat talent? In this video, I'm going to be telling you 4 reasons why hard work in reality very rarely beats talent, at least in the way that most people think about that statement. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to give you 2 ways that you can find the missing ingredient that does allow hard work to beat talent. The missing ingredient that if you were to miss would mean that your hard work will probably be very likely to not beat talent. For those of you that are new, I'm Dr. Justin Sung. I'm a former medical doctor and full-time learning coach. And for the last decade, I have worked with thousands of learners around the world to teach them to learn more efficiently. So here's the thing about hard work and talent. When I was 18, trying to enter into medical school, I studied a lot. I tell the story all the time. I was studying 15, 20 hours a day, very little sleep. Yes, it is very unhealthy. No, it is not a good way to live. I was not having a good time. My efficiency was terrible, but at the time, 18-year-old me, I really didn't know anything about efficient study methods at all. I had, like writing lots and lots of notes, just a lot of time reading through textbooks and writing notes and doing my flashcards. So when I was entering to medical school, I managed to get good grades, good enough grades to get into medical school. But I also had friends that were studying like half the amount of time I was studying, and they were getting, in some cases, even better grades. So you could say that they were more talented than I was, but my hard work allowed me to overcome that. Having said that, I also had a lot of other people around me that were studying more than these friends, and they weren't able to overcome it. So what's the difference? Fast forward a few years, well, several years, I'm doing my Master of Education. I made some videos about that as well. And I spent about 15% of the amount of time studying for my Master of Education compared to the other people in my cohort. I was doing a full-time Master of Education and actually putting in less hours than the part-time requirement, significantly less time. And at the end, I graduated top of my cohort. I got the Dean's Award for Academic Excellence. I was a top graduating student. My grades were essentially perfect, which is why I was invited back to Monash to actually lecture people on the skills that I use, and I continue to do that today. But one of my peers in the Master of Education group, I know that she quit her job to do this full time. She was studying 60 hours a week for this master's, and she was still struggling. And she did not manage to get really even close to the grades that I got. So in her instance, if she had just studied even more, instead of 60 hours, maybe if she did 100 hours, would she have caught up or beaten me? Probably not, because even as it is, she was putting in like 10 times the amount of hard work compared to me. And so clearly the formula for success is not simply hard work times talent. There's a missing ingredient here. In fact, 8 years ago when I first started getting into the education space, I set up my first company. It was a non-profit social enterprise. And the whole premise was, can we teach younger students in high school, especially from underprivileged backgrounds, some of the skills on how to use their effort more effectively? And the reason I set that company up was because I started noticing so many students from these lower socioeconomic positions that went to these less academic schools coming into uni, and they were really struggling. And it was certainly not because of a lack of effort that they weren't doing very well. It actually felt, from my perspective, that their hard work seemed to be futile. And the thing is that I now know that this is true. Hard work can be futile. You can work hard and still do poorly. And what that causes is a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure. And over time, it makes people believe that they are simply incapable or not smart enough or not good enough. And that is just not true. We like to say that hard work beats talent because it is a message of hope. I get that. But it is oversimplified, or at least people see it in a way that is oversimplified. Especially young people putting in a lot of work, they think the answer, if they're not doing well, is to simply work harder. And this is especially true in a lot of Asian countries. It's just part of the culture. So let me tell you the problems with that approach. Reason number 1 is that hard work has diminishing returns. When you put in a little bit of work, if you start from having no work to doing a decent amount of work, you're getting really good returns. However, if you go from having high amounts of work to even more work, you're gonna get less bang for your buck. Every extra hour you're putting in is giving you less results. And at a certain point, it actually starts being worse. More hours actually makes you perform worse. So for example, if you were to study 180 hours a week, is that even possible? Let me just think about this. If you were to study 140 hours a week, then you would be so sleep deprived that your cognitive ability is probably in like 10-20% of what it would be at its peak. And so really at that point, you may as well have only studied like 10 hours a week and you'd probably do just the same. Now here's the thing, in the low levels of competition, especially like junior high school, it's enough just to have some hard work because most people around you are just not working hard. So if you're the person that's putting in 7 or 8 out of 10 effort while everyone around you is putting in 2 or 3 out of 10 effort, then you're probably gonna do better than them. But this is not the case usually later in life. A lot of people feel this in their senior years of high school, going into college, university, where things are a little bit more challenging. Certainly in the professional world, just putting in more time and more effort is not really enough to change things enough. And part of this is because usually for things that are difficult and competitive, people with talent are not doing 2 or 3 out of 10 effort. They are also putting in 5 or 6 out of 10 effort. So if the difference in talent between you and this other person is too much, you just cannot compensate for it. There is not enough time to give. And the other side is that the person with talent has stuff left in reserve. If they notice that they're starting to fall behind, they can go from a 5 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 and then beat the competition again. They have stuff left in the tank, whereas if you are at 9 out of 10 just to keep up, that's not going to be sustainable. And so far, if this is making sense to you, then I would appreciate if you leave a like because it helps this video reach more people. Reason number 2 is that effort is fuel. Hard work is important, but it's more of a prerequisite. For example, if a machine doesn't perform very well and it produces low quality products with half a tank of gas, does it get better just because you add more fuel to it? See, for something like studying and learning, spending more time and effort on using methods that aren't well suited and optimized can actually make things worse. The classic example that I often give is flashcard over-reliance. We know that flashcards are an excellent tool for its purpose. You can rote memorize lower order facts and details, especially in the short term. But beyond that, relational thinking, conceptual thinking, complex problem solving, deeper application, or having better long-term memory, we know that this is not a good tool. But lots of students over-rely on this, and actually in some cases, that's the only technique that they have in their arsenal. And this means that we can easily become overwhelmed because the brain's ability to just prune out unnecessary, irrelevant information, which is what the brain thinks about stuff that you're just repeatedly cramming in through flashcards, your brain's ability to do that is much more efficient and faster than your ability to just do and repeat more of the same flashcards. You're never gonna win against your brain. In fact, research on forgetting curves shows that irrelevant information can be pruned from the brain within seconds to minutes at most, which is why it can feel like you're constantly fighting against your memory because you actually are. But then Justin, isn't that better than nothing? Well, yes, it's better than nothing, but it's not better than the alternative. See, if we commit all of this time to using that strategy, then we're taking time away from using other strategies that might be more beneficial for different purposes. And so you can easily see how just thinking harder work is the solution can be problematic. We can use a method that's not giving us good results, and therefore we think the reason is because we're not using that enough. So we just put more time and more effort into it. And so here's a rule of thumb that I follow for myself and for any students that I work with. If the amount of effort you're putting in is reasonable, for example, if you're in high school, I'd say 10 to 20 hours a week of studying is pretty reasonable, and you're not getting consistent or predictable or desirable results, then your methods can probably be optimized. In fact, for most things in life, you should be able to get pretty predictable and consistent results with only a decent amount of effort if you have the right method. And then once you know that this entire system works and is well tuned, then you can start pumping more fuel into it, more time and more energy. And this is actually kind of intuitive. We probably already know this. A famous example is the late, great Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest NBA basketball players of all time. I guess some people would debate that. I'm not really a basketball guy, but that's what I hear. But the thing about Kobe is that he was always practicing. He was like famous to be a hard worker. In fact, there's actually the story that I saw like a clip of before where another NBA player decided to come in early to training. And then he got there at like 4 or 5 a.m. and he found that Kobe was already there practicing. And then he, trained all day. And then when it was time to go home, Kobe was still there training. And then when he asked him, why did you train so late that night? Kobe is said to have replied, because I want you to know that I will always work harder than you.
So after the games, I'm like, hey, Kobe, like, why were you in the gym for so long? He's like, because I saw you come in. And I wanted you to know that it doesn't matter how hard you work, that I'm willing to work harder than you.
And let's just take a moment to appreciate that that is a badass statement, and Kobe is a beast of a man. However, what's also implicit there is that Kobe, one of the best basketball players in the world, using one of the best facilities in the world, being coached by a world-class, coaching team, is probably practicing using methods that are pretty good. Which is why, talent aside, just because you practice as much as he did, it doesn't mean that you're gonna be an NBA player. Which brings me to reason number 3, which is that hard work is also about the type of work that you do. And the way that I like to explain this is using the term asset. When we work hard, we want to build an asset. In financial terms, you can consider an asset as something that allows you to improve the amount of cash that you can earn without needing to do more work. So for example, if you buy a very rare and precious jewel, like a diamond, and that diamond increases in value, when you sell it, you've made a profit. That diamond has, by just the value of it existing, made money for you. So it's an asset. So we should also think about spending time to invest in our own personal skill assets. Imagine 2 lumberjacks that are trying to cut down some trees. One may spend all of their time and effort on just cutting down the trees, while another may spend half of their time and effort on sharpening their axe. Over time, the person with the sharper axe is going to be more efficient and they're going to win if these 2 lumberjacks are competing. But both lumberjacks worked very hard. In fact, some might even say that the one that spent all of their time just swinging their blunt axe around was working harder, which is why we often say work smarter, not harder. I believe it actually should be work smarter, and then once you've figured out how to work smarter, then feel free, if you want to work hard as well. And then you become unstoppable. And so even though hard work can beat talent, and even though the statement, hard work beats talent, can give people hope, in reality, it can actually do the opposite. It can rob people of hope if you only see hard work and talent as the 2 parts of the equation to success, whatever success means to you. Because really the equation should be success equals hard work times talent times your processes. In fact, you could even say that talent is simply just the natural ability for someone to intuitively use more optimal processes. Think about that. And so here are 2 things that you can do to help turn your effort more consistently into results and give yourself the chance for your hard work to beat talent. First one is to pull back. If you're already at 100% capacity, you do not have the time to invest to learn how to work smarter. To sharpen your axe, you need time to sharpen your axe. And what that means is that sometimes you actually have to accept the short-term loss. You have to accept that maybe right now in the short term, you may not perform as well as you want to. And I know that can be really, really difficult for some people. But if you don't spend the time to improve your skills and learn how to work smarter, then you're going to be stuck in this spiral forever. There's going to be no hope for you because you're never improving. The future version of you is always stuck with the same problems that the current version of you has, plus the new problems that the future version of you has inherited. If right now you feel like you're not able to stay on top of things, then that means that you are giving the future version of you the things that you weren't able to deal with today to deal with later. The future version of you has all those same things to deal with, plus the stuff that you weren't able to deal with before. But if your ability to deal with it is not improving, that backlog just builds and builds and builds, and that's why we can get overwhelmed. And so this is what short-term pain, long-term gain really means. It doesn't mean just put your head down and work hard right now so that you can get a good result later. It means accept defeat now. Lose the game so that you can win the championship. Which brings us to number 2, which is to know more things. A lot of people will say that I don't know how to work smarter, so I can't. I don't know what to do. But it doesn't stop you from taking the next step, which is to learn what to do, to gain more information about that. If the reason that you can't work smarter is you don't know how, your next step is to know how. So maybe you're not taking time to sharpen your axe. Maybe that time is spent on learning how to sharpen an axe, which would lead to you being able to sharpen your axe. Taking action is rarely about changing your action immediately. Most of the time, especially for things that are difficult or complicated, taking action means making the decision to learn what action you should take. And so if you want to learn how to improve your learning or studying efficiency and work smarter in that way, then you might be interested in checking out my video on encoding. Or if you want to see me apply some of these techniques in in real life, for example, like I did with my master's program, I actually documented that, and you can check out that video here as well. As always, if you found this useful, leave a thumbs up, share it with your friends. I appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.